Coming up today on the Locked On Hornets podcast, Sam Perley, the one and only of Hornets.com, joins us to talk about the Combine. He was in attendance at the lottery. He covers the individual workouts. We got a lot to talk about with Sam Perley today, all on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
You are Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's the Locked On Hornets podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your podcast, and that includes YouTube. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to and faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Let's welcome the man of the show, Sam Perley, joining us here, a part of Hornets.com. Follow him on Twitter at Sam_Perley, covering really every single event. He's the guy that if the Hornets do something, he's writing about it on their team website. Sam, we appreciate the time, man. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We have a different background, but my only question is we have some sweet photos. You have the Kemba Walker jersey. Can you move your head a little bit for the people? There you go.
You got to do it backwards.
There you go. Kemba Walker jersey hanging in the back. Sam, my question is, does this mean no cats in the background?
There will not be any cats. The door. So I'm not in my living room anymore. I'm in a office now, and the cats, they do like to come in here and roam during the day. But they will not be in the background climbing up the walls or anything. I actually have the door closed. It's crazy concept called privacy. I get to have my own space. I don't have to share with the cats all the time anymore.
You know, you guys just don't see it when I do these shows, but every single time that I do a show from the kitchen with the aquarium in the background, you got some animals, but we also have 3 dogs lying down next to me every single time I do the show. Now, I don't have the whole jungle gym for them to climb on like you did with the cats, and it was a lot more entertaining that way. That was awesome. They're just like no good for nothing, laying down, sleeping, waiting to get fed again. That's how my dogs are. So I've got animals too, but I wish they could be in the background a little bit more. So Sam Perley helping us out once more. Man, you've been busy. I mean, I know this time of year picks up after, especially this season. So you have the regular season, which of course keeps you busy as well. But this year, there's so much change, Sam. Like you have a new head coach, you have a new GM. This was even before the regular season ended. Now you're going with all these other hires, and you're still going to the Combine and doing the workouts. Let's talk about the Combine and maybe a little bit about the lottery here first. Lots of people had eyeballs on the workouts, 5-on-5 drills, Combine interviews. What's that process like for you covering the Combine for the Charlotte Hornets when you've gone up there in the past, and maybe how it's differed this year?
Yeah, it's really exciting, and it's a fun event to go to. I think this was the 6th one I've been to. In the first 3 years, they actually did it at kind of like this multi-quest sportsplex thing, kind of up in a suburb of Chicago, and then pandemic hit and they didn't really have the Combine, the traditional format, I think in 2020 and 2021. And then they moved it to Wintrust Arena in sort of the, I guess they call it the South Loop neighborhood of Chicago, which is where DePaul and the Chicago Sky play. So, and then the lottery's in like a convention center across the street. Everybody's in a hotel that's connected to Wintrust Arena. So it's a really fun event. And I don't, to be completely honest, don't keep up with a ton of college basketball during the season just because I'm watching, so much Hornets and other NBA. So when the season ends and you kind of can decompress from the Hornets season, it becomes a little bit of a cram session with draft prospects and just trying to figure out, okay, this is where the Hornets picks are, who's kind of in that range. You start kind of looking for, storylines, things that you kind of, it's funny too, because it's like, you're only going to draft a couple players, but you're looking at a net of like 60 or 70. So you kind of just trying to get ahead of it and learn as much about the guys as you can. So when the time does come and you start and you draft these guys, you're kind of a little bit ahead of the process, kind of knowing who they are, what they're about, where they're from, what kind of makes them tick. So I love it. It's fun. It's kind of definitely like a big kickoff event for the off season and draft season. That's now, I guess, draft's probably a little over a month away now.
it's a crash course of
Yes,
what these people
crash
are.
course.
And especially for somebody that doesn't pay attention to college basketball, and even me, yeah, I pay attention to college ball, but really more so the ACC for the radio. And even watching the NCAA tournament, you get to learn a lot about who these people are and the interviews. You guys do a great job, by the way. Go to the Charlotte Hornets YouTube channel. There is a lot of great content on these prospects, just interviewing Sam, asking a bunch of questions, other people as well. So go to their YouTube page. I did want to say South Loop, Chicago. I stayed at the Marriott right there next to Wintrust when I was there in August. Harold's Fried Chicken. If you do this again and it's at Wintrust, Harold's Fried Chicken, the lemon pepper, but also just the traditional hot, it's banging. Please try that and promise me you'll do that next time. The combine was interesting, but also you attended the lottery too. Like, Sam, I'm interested in this because anytime I hear national NBA pundits talk about the lottery, they talk about this like it is the most confidential file changing hands in the United States and that they will protect it with their life. It's a weird event. People have described it. What is your takeaway from attending the lottery that you were there just this past week?
Yeah, it's definitely a strange event. And I think you kind of look back on it. It's like, yeah, we kind of spent the whole day like just prepping to go into a room for 30 minutes to watch somebody open envelopes. It definitely had a different feel this year compared to last year. There was all sort of the tension and an anxiousness to see who would get that top pick last year for Victor Wembanyama. And, it was a little bit different this year too. They had it in the middle of the day on a Sunday. Usually it's on a Tuesday night. So the scheduling and the feel was already kind of way off a little bit, but it's an interesting event. I mean, it's you kind of look at it in the sense of like someone's franchise is going to change at some point. Someone's going to get a big break. And then you see in there too that, I kind of go into it when, just to have, Toronto, I think they had a top 6 pick. They fell out of I think they ended up getting 8th, and Brooklyn's pick that goes to Houston ended up getting 3rd, which I'm sure nothing they could do about it, but I'm sure that kind of stung a little bit more from that James Harden trade. I think there was one more team, I think, that lost a pick or something happened where the Pistons, I think, fell from, having the worst record to 5th for the 2nd year in a row. So,
and you just see pain across people's faces when that happens.
you don't relish in any of that, but it does make it interesting too. And it kind of puts in a little perspective that, it would have been great for the Hornets to kind of move up, but they did get, had a good break last year. They moved up from 8 to 3 in 2020.
Yeah.
2 of the last 4 years, I mean, they've moved up a combined, I think it was 5, 6, 7 spots or something. They got a pair of Rookie of the Year finalists and a Rookie of the Year out of one of those two. So it's a crazy process in the whole like back room where people are watching and they have to get with their phones and they're not allowed to leave the room until the announcements are done.
And you're one of these people. I mean, like you don't get to go back there, right? Like you're just on the outside. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm just in the crowd watching,
right,
just like everybody else. And there's kind of a slew of team executives and agencies, and so that every team will have a representative in the back room. I think for us it was Rick Schnall this year, just kind of watching the process firsthand. And then you have your rep on stage, and they have a few other writers back there. I think Rod Boone was back there, just kind of documenting the process a little bit with the ping pong balls and the matching them up to the numbers too. So
sure.
I'm not sure if they're allowed to exit the room after that, or like it's complete secrecy. So I think for whatever reason, I could be way off in this. I think they use like the company that sort of like seals like award shows and stuff. It's like the same company, maybe. I could be way off. I remember reading that, but sort of the secrecy of putting stuff in the envelope and then delivering it. So it's a fun event. And then when you have the 3rd best odds and you fall to 6 and it's just kind of over and you're like, I guess I'll just go back to the hotel now. Like,
well, did you cover it last year? Were you there?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I was there for that one. And I was sitting next to our producer, Nick Bolick, in the chair. And so you're kind of there just to gather reactions if something really positive happens. And as we got to 4 and then they hit the commercial break, and then it just kind of kept going and going. And then it was like, once we got to past 3, I was like, like I kind of like almost, I might've even grabbed his hand, like this could happen. And then it just happens so quickly. And then it's like, there's sort of this wave of like, disappointment, but then it's like, oh my, we did move up, and
Right.
there's some really good prospects too, and obviously the Hornets landed a tremendous one in Brandon Miller. So and then once we moved up to 2, it was like we kind of started looking through the crowd to find some people to talk to. Zach Lowe, Adrian Wojnarowski, just kind of getting their take on what this means for the Hornets. Didn't really have so much that this year when you fall from 3 to 6. So
Yeah, and it's not even the same kind of class. Like when you are moving up in a class that contains Wemby, but also just a really strong top 5. Last year was the lottery not to fall in. This one, it's okay. But last year, I could see the panic on everybody. Oh God, it's Michael Scott. What's happening? Everybody run around like crazy and go find somebody to interview. If you recognize their face in NBA circles, go interview them. The Hornets got the 2nd pick. Maybe not so much this year, but that's okay. If we're trading off on lottery luck, because it has been kind to us, like more often than it was previously, to get LaMelo, to get Brandon. And once the Hornets get up to that spot, like they deliver, and they have the last couple of seasons. So the lottery, interesting event to cover, I imagine. It's funny that you were there, and we appreciate you talking about it. I do want to get to some workout stuff, so hold on really quickly. We'll get to that on the other side of the break. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast, Sam Perley will be joining us in just a moment again to talk about the pre-workout process, the pre-draft workout process, and how he covers everything going on at the Spectrum Center during everything going on with some of the players coming in and working out for Jeff Peterson, Charles Lee, and all that stuff. So we'll talk about that in just a moment here on Locked On Hornets. This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team for faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. And LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. It's so easy, folks. Just go to LinkedIn Jobs and you yourself can be successful, as many small businesses are. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. More Locked On Hornets coming up next. All right, Sam, I know you were also hard at work during the pre-draft process with all of the prospects coming at the Spectrum Center, and maybe you have individual, maybe you have some team workouts. You've been covering workouts for a long time. Does the process at all change? I know your roles changed a little bit about what you're allowed to do, what happens with some of the guys that come over, because you've covered with Rich Cho, Mitch Kupchak. Now you're going to experience the Jeff Peterson experience, if you will. Does it change across different regimes? Like, what do you usually gear up for during the workout process?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's mostly it stays the same. I think and I think you'd see that across the board from a lot of teams. And to go back to kind of the combine impressions real quick, I mean, when I said that was kind of the beginning of the process, I mean, you're really going there to kind of start getting a feel. This is a year-round thing, though. I started the crash course a few weeks ago, but scouts and everything, they've been working on this year-round, especially college, scouting guys and international teams. And I thought it was great this year that every prospect had to at least participate in the measurements and the media. That's something that hasn't been the case necessarily in years past. Didn't have to do the 5-on-5, but that's where you start kind of, I think, formulating your, really kind of cutting it down and scheduling interviews and meeting with agents and players. And it's just one piece of the process. I think the individual draft workouts, like you said, is one piece of the process. The film is one piece of the process, the measurements.
Yeah.
That's, I think, what I like so much about everything is it's not just the draft workouts, not just the measurements, it's not just what they look like on film in college. It's like you're putting all of that together. The sit-down interviews, kind of getting to know guys, seeing how they would fit with your team. I think this year in particular, with there not being a really as streamlined a draft, according to experts, as it was maybe necessarily last year's. You really got to do your due diligence from a scouting standpoint. And I think having more information this year with the measurements, with the, availability stuff, I think is only going to help teams too. So to circle back in question, I think it's kind of standard across the board. I think you're just kind of getting guys in, you're looking for things. Maybe if a guy didn't shoot so well in college from 3-point, you're looking to see how his shot looks. Is there something mechanically wrong with it? Is it a shot selection issue? I think you go into each one of them kind of looking for certain things. And because that's the thing too. So many of these guys were asked to do stuff in college that they didn't do in high school, or they're not going to do in the NBA. So it's okay. You look like this in college. What more can you do, or what are you going to be asked to do at the next level? What parts of your game can we unlock? So I love the sort of the process of trying to decipher everything.
Well, no, and this is what you're involved in, just as somebody that covers this. It feels like the interview process is what's valued the most. And you hear about this at the NFL Combine. Yeah, the 40 time and all that. The athleticism matters, folks. I'm one that believes that it's not just the underwear Olympics. I think the same thing matters here with the size and the measurables. But also, I don't doubt that the teams do view the interview process as valuable as all the other measurables that you have athleticism wise. Is that how you take it, Sam, with how important the interview process is with some of these teams?
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's especially when, it's compared to NFL, and not to minimize NFL, but when you're one of 52 versus one of 15, I mean,
That's a good
you
point.
want is, chemistry and feel and stuff like that. And I think that's what a lot of the combine is too. It's, you see the 5-on-5 on TV, but GMs and everything are meeting with prospects upstairs in the hotel, and agents and things like that. So you really want to kind of get a feel of a guy, just get to know him a little bit, because, this is a big investment you're making, not only in a draft pick, but, time wise, development, resources, things like that. So you want to make sure that you're bringing in somebody that you think fits your culture, fits your organization, fits your team, that's going to mesh well with your other teammates. And you do a lot of talking. You talk to college coaches, you talk to maybe his ex teammates, you talk to guys that maybe have the same agency. So I like the interview process. I don't think it's the end all be all. I think it's just one part of the puzzle, just like film is part of the puzzle, measurements, scrimmage, draft workouts, things like that. And then as we know, you can do all the work in the world, and then you get to draft night, and somebody throws a curveball ahead of you, and it just kind of throws everything out the window what you thought it was. So that's why it's so important to kind of do your due diligence and everything, because you never know what's going to happen. You think the draft might play out one way, and then a team moves up, or a team takes somebody else that you didn't think was going to be taken. It kind of throws everything for a little bit of a loop. So definitely getting a feel and talking with the guys and interviewing them. We talked to them a little bit after their workouts too, and just kind of get their impressions. And then if they end up back on with the Hornets, you can kind of like go. But that's a big thing about the combine when we gather some of this footage is, ideally we're trying to find, there's 70 guys doing availability, but
Right.
it's physically impossible to talk to all of them. So you just try and cast as wide a net as you can. And then hopefully they end up in Charlotte, and hey, we can go back and use the footage at some point, but you're really just kind of guessing, because it's 70 guys. I mean, I don't think it's even physically possible to go around to every single podium and ask one question in a 2-hour span.
Well, I mean, and I know this was true with Mitch Kupchak. I'll be interested to see if this happens with Jeff Peterson, but Mitch brought in a lot of guys. I mean, just tons and tons of players. And so I imagine that is nice. And Mitch has a draft history that he did pretty well with. And I wonder, okay, especially with the second rounders, like it's really important to get to know what makes them tick, what they're all about. And I think you get a better picture of that with some of these players that come to the Spectrum Center, because you're right. Like, it's just so hard to do it when, yeah, the other teams want to get the interview done too. And that means you have 15 minutes or something like that at the combine if you have any individual workouts. I know it's not very long. Last thing before we get you out of here, Sam. Favorite combine moment? It can just be any time that you've covered. It can be this combine. It can be in your entire history going up to the NBA draft combine. Is there a moment where somebody said something that went viral, or just you being in awe with a feat someone accomplished? What's your favorite combine moment?
I've had some when I first started doing the combine. I'm trying to think favorite combine moments. It's very much, it has a little bit of a summer league feel, because there's so many coaches there and prospects. I mean, everyone's kind of mingling together with the agencies, and I think I was, when I first went to the combine in 2017, I think we had like 11th pick, maybe. It was the draft that the Hornets took Malik Monk, and I don't think he
Oh, okay.
spoke to media that year, but I think that was back when if you're fringe top 10 or top 15, you really did the bare minimum in terms of, just maybe you meet with teams and that's about it. But I think I was kind of naive because you go to these things and they do the measurements. And I for whatever reason, this is the first thing that stands out, but you go there and I think De'Aaron Fox might have been in that draft too. And he was something like 27 pounds under what he was listed at Kentucky. And it's like,
Yeah.
I started to realize, okay, maybe these schools are kind of just inflating these numbers on their website. Because if you went to Kentucky's website, it'll say he's like 6'3" or 6'4", and he's 195 pounds. And then he was probably the highest guy that got drafted that year. I think did a media availability, and then you see him come out, and you're like, I don't think you're 6'4", 190. And
well, you remember the Malik Monk wingspan thing too, like how that was talked about. He's like, oh, okay, yikes! Like this guy doesn't have a long wingspan. Those Kentucky guys, like even Rob Dillingham this year, they're tiny coming out of there every once in a while.
Yeah, so I'm sure Kentucky's not the only school, but it's like you go to the website and they kind of they'll inflate. We'll add an inch, we'll add another inch, and then he gets to the combine. It's like, oh my God, De'Aaron Fox has lost like 30 pounds in the last 2 weeks. Like, is he okay? Is he? It's like, no, he just was never that big to begin with. So I thought that was kind of funny, and there's been a lot of great moments over the years, and even guys that you talk to. I'll try and find guys that are just interesting, overseas players, guys that maybe you don't have a whole lot of background on, and you'll have a nice conversation for him, and maybe he doesn't end up with the Hornets, but you end up kind of following him along and hoping things work well. I'm trying to think another quick story. I think that same draft there was a French prospect, I think named Jonathan Jean. You remember? And I think like after I think it was 2017, like after the draft or something, got diagnosed with like a heart condition or Marfan syndrome or something, couldn't get drafted. And it was, I remember having a conversation with him, and it was, I felt bad because this is a big moment and it was kind of taken away, but I think he eventually ended up getting cleared, something down the line. But there's so many good stories, I think, in the combine and the draft process that you root for the guys too. So, and even if they don't end up in Charlotte, you kind of hope because this is a really big deal, and it's I think we take for granted how hard it is to get to the combine and to be in that situation and to be invited and to get drafted too. So try not to lose perspective of that.
No, it makes sense. I mean, you get to know them even for. It sounds crazy because it's just even at sometimes 5-minute Q&A back and forth, or it could be some kind of 10, 15-minute experience with them, but it's 5 minutes more than you had previously. I mean, even when the Hornets make some of these guys that are in for workouts available to media, I'll remember, hey, like, okay, Marjon Beauchamp, like, cool dude, getting to talk to him. What makes him tick? Oh, Max Christie. Some second round, late first round guys that Mitch Kupchak is just doing his due diligence at the time. They're not really picking around that spot, but maybe they fall. And so he's bringing them in. We get to learn about some of these players that you have Q&As with. I asked him 2 questions, and already there's this weird, I hope you work out, buddy. Like, yeah, great talking to you. You definitely get that. So I'm with you. And the combine measurement finagling, it's a real thing. Like it feels like the only guys that don't get exposed, Sam, are the really tall ones. Like Klingon, size checks out. That's what you were listed at. That's what was measured at the combine. Zach Edey, 7'4", and he's like 7'3.5". Okay, checks out. Got it. It's the tall guys that always check out, not so much the guards that just need every single inch that they can get. And then their team kind of helps you in that process. So interesting to see there.
Yeah, I'll need back when Doug, and I need his take on this because I want to know. I don't think they're doing it this year's guys not being measured in shoes. So they give their height without shoes as if they're going to play barefoot. I'm sure there's a reason to it. I'm sure it makes perfect sense somewhere.
Well, my thing is with the shoe thing, I get it because what kind of shoes can I wear? Can I wear the Vince Carter Shocks? And if I get the Shocks, then maybe it gives me an extra half an inch. Like at least I get it. Has Doug, God knows what he has said about this. Is he one that wants them to measure with their shoes on?
It not necessarily, but it just seems like something that would, he'd look at it and look at the measurements and be like,
Yeah.
"Why are they measuring without shoes or something? You're measuring with shoes. They're going to play in shoes." But then you're right. It's like, do I want to, I go there with a bigger shoe that I'm never going to play with, and then
Yeah,
it
got
gives
the
me an extra
orthotics
inch or
in.
two. But it's kind of weird. Be like, okay, he was he's measuring 6'10" without shoes.
Yeah.
Means he's really about 6'11 and a half. And it's like, it's just kind of those weird, I'm sure it just does it to make it streamlined, but I think for sort of the casual observer and the fans, it's like, what are they in shoes? That's all I care about.
It's totally something Doug would question. You're right. It's always about is it the bad weight, or is it 20 pounds of muscle, or is it 20
Yeah.
pounds just period? You're right. Doug is going to make that more complicated. And that means you know him well. We know Sam well. We appreciate Sam hopping on with us once again. Go check out his work. It's fantastic. Hornets.com, but also he's tweeting that out on his timeline at Sam_Perley. Also, go to the Hornets YouTube channel. If you want to hear from all of these prospects, they've put up all that content. You get to hear from guys like Stephon Castle, Ron Holland, Reed Shepard, all sorts of second-round picks, the local guys, Hunter Salas, Harrison Ingram. Sam Perley is usually the one leading off with the questions on those sound bites. So he's working hard. Good job from the Hornets there, and make sure you go check out that content. Sam, we appreciate it, man. It's always great stuff. Thanks again.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
All right, that's Sam Perley, and again, go check him out on Twitter at Sam_Perley. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast, I will cut up some of that sound and then play that for you, and we will play you what Stephon Castle feels like is his best position and what he might be able to do with Brandon Miller and LaMelo Ball. He had some interesting comments about that. We also have some comments from Reed Shepard and Ron Holland, somebody that we haven't discussed a whole lot about here on Locked On Hornets. That's still to come in the last segment. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance: superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. We have been appreciative of eBay Motors for quite some time. They continue to do fantastic work. And so, again, make sure you go check out eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. More Locked On Hornets ahead. All right, so now I have a couple of those sound bites that I was just talking about. During the combine interview process, we get to know these players. You just heard Sam talk about it. Totally agree. It's funny. We might even get a little bit of attached or a lot attached based on what they say for 5, 10, 15 minutes. And we also get to know how they feel about themselves, what they think their strengths are, what it is they want to work on. And they might give you some fluff. They might just give you a whole bunch of vague nothingness and just give you good old-fashioned coach speak as a prospect. But other times they let you in onto how they really feel about themselves as a basketball player. Stephon Castle did that. I think I'll probably just play this soundbite because we're already a little over time, and we have this other sound that we can maybe play next time Doug joins us next week sometime. But I wanted to play you the Stephon Castle sound because he has been the guy that's been mocked more than any other player to the Charlotte Hornets at number 6. And I'm not sure he's going to be there, but he's the guy that has been mocked most frequently. He's becoming the favorite, if you will, I would imagine, if we're looking at the odds on FanDuel, who is going to land with the Hornets most likely. So if that's the case, then Stephon Castle has to mesh with these guys, right? Yeah, you're supposed to just pick the most talented player as much as possible. Who cares about the fit or need more so? But when you have Brandon Miller, fit does you do start to care about fit a little bit more, and you're hoping that LaMelo is healthy. And so once you have two guys that you feel like can be a part of your foundation, you do start to care about fit just a little bit. And I think Stephon Castle can play with these guys. I've talked about the size difference between Stephon and Brandon and how much, okay, maybe Brandon has to play the 3, and I know Steve Clifford wanted him to play the 2, but you can still make it work. I didn't anticipate Stephon Castle playing point guard, though. And I don't know if he would do that with the Hornets. In fact, I'm sure he wouldn't play primary ball handler as long as LaMelo Ball is out there on the court. Is that even something you want him doing with LaMelo on the bench? Well, Stephon Castle wants to play point guard. Here's what he had to say during some of the combine interviews.
I would say I developed as really just slowing down.
That was Ron Holland. Let's give this another try. Here's Stephon Castle.
Just being more on the ball. I feel like my true position is a point guard, and I feel like the past couple months, I had to sacrifice for, the better of our team, and, I worked out for it. So it's not anything to, really harp on or, be bitter about. But, yeah, that's just some of the things, being on the ball, shooting off the dribble a little bit more and, just stuff like that.
Shooting a little bit more. It's like his biggest weakness that we've all seen. Look, if Stephon has that kind of confidence, then great. But it's been raising a lot of eyebrows what he had to say with that comment. I also wonder, okay, man, he got a championship with UConn playing the way he did, and he was good. If you go back to the Final Four, the biggest games of his life, he wasn't even on the UConn team that won it the first time. They go back to back, and this was Castle's first year. So it's the biggest game against Alabama of his life. It's the biggest game against Purdue in the championship of his life. And they're daring him to make shots from the outside. And even if they know the scouting report, here's somebody that struggles shooting the basketball. We can't leave Caravan open. We can't leave Spencer open. We can't leave Newton open. So now we have to make sure that we crowd the paint for Castle, but we got to get out there on shooters, and playing alongside those shooters helps spread the floor for Castle. And so I think that's a big difference. But LaMelo and Brandon are some shooters. So you think that he would work really well with them. It's just, you think LaMelo feeding a cutting Castle is how we envision him being on the team, not necessarily Castle being the primary ball handler, if that's what he wants. Now, an NBA team is going to say, look, man, we're going to draft you at 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you're going to play the role that's asked of you. And if you don't like it, then you're not going to be able to thrive as much as possible in the early stages of your NBA career. But it does feel like he really wants to showcase his point guard potential. I also wonder, would he have transferred out of UConn if he wants it this bad? Or would he have stayed there? I mean, if he wasn't this high of a prospect and still felt like he does now, well, he's got the championship. Do you want to go be the lead guy on ball and lead another team to a chip? Or if that's what you think that you can do. So the real question is, does that comment deter me from drafting Castle if I'm the Charlotte Hornets? And my answer is no, because ultimately, as much as I am very pro player, I'm all about player empowerment. At the same time, look, if you're the Hornets and Castle stands, 6'7" in shoes, 6'5.5" without shoes, that's good enough to play the wing and maybe a little bit of 2, but also handle, like, if you can become a secondary ball handler, well, that's just going to have to suffice. And we want you to play some defense because you're really good at it. And of course, we want you to do the stuff that we know you're really good at. So this is what you're going to have to do through the first 2 years of your NBA career. And then if you showcase more ability, then great. We all win. We all prosper. But right now, you're going to have to play with LaMelo as the true point guard, Brandon Miller having the basketball in his hands quite a bit. And we'll see just how much you have the basketball in your hands. We'll see. But right now, yeah, role is cutting, slashing, defense, and that's how we also all win too. This is how you get paid and build up some equity in the league. I would not be deterred from drafting Castle despite those comments, even though I know that is a hot topic. Thanks for making us your first listen. Locked On Hornets. Catch us anywhere you get your podcast. That includes YouTube. Also, make sure you still check out Doug Branson's Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com. You can also listen to me on WFNZ every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. We'll be back with you on Monday. Hopefully you guys have a great weekend. Thanks again, and we'll be back with you next week with Doug Branson.